The sun had scarcely cleared the ridges of Mount Helicon when distant horns rolled across the Boeotian plain. In that pale glow, the armies of Sparta and Thebes stood motionless, rank on rank of bronze-clad men glinting like a field of hammered mirrors. Yet the stillness masked a convulsion that had been building for decades. It was 371 BC, and every polis from the Thracian coast to the heel of Laconia sensed that the balance of Greek power was teetering. The great wars with Persia lay a generation behind. The long agony of the Peloponnesian struggle still echoed in shattered walls and empty coffers. And within that vacuum, two rival visions of Hellenic destiny emerged. On one side marched Sparta, the self-appointed guardian of orthodox hoplite warfare, its kings raised from birth to drill inside a phalanx, its citizen body sharpened into a living spearhead, its helot serfs producing food, so the warrior class need never unclasp a shield in harvest season. Spartan lawgivers boasted that their men never asked how many the enemy were, only where they stood. And for more than a century, that ruthless confidence had been vindicated. At Plataea, at Tanagra, at Mantinea, the scarlet-cloaked Spartiate hoplite proved that a single-minded devotion to drill and discipline could batter any opposition into flight. Across the field stood Thebes, richer in soil, poorer in legends. To Athenians, it was a plodding farm town. To Spartans, it was a satellite tugged reluctantly into the Peloponnesian alliance. But Thebes possessed something epic-shaping, a cadre of leaders who believed tradition could be bent into new shapes. Chief among them was Epaminondas, a philosopher-soldier whose mind roved from Pythagorean harmonies to infantry spacing, from ethical maxims to the tensile limits of sarissa wood. As he studied the shattered alliances of post-war Greece, he asked a subversive question. What if the phalanx did not have to be symmetrical? That question would crack the Spartan mystique like a spear tip piercing a hoplon. The immediate spark for war was deceptively small. Thebes, emboldened after throwing off Spartan garrisons from its citadel, demanded that its Boeotian neighbors accept a federal league in which every city enjoyed equal citizenship, but sent delegates to Theban assemblies. Sparta, jealous of any rival hegemon, summoned King Kleombrotos II from the Corinthian Gulf with orders to chastise the upstarts. Kleombrotos gathered perhaps 11,000 hoplites, 2,000 true Spartiates, another 4,000 perioikoi and liberated helots, plus allied contingents from Phocis, Tegea, Mantinea, Elis, and the rest of the Peloponnesian coalition still anxious to borrow Spartan prestige. Against this gleaming tide, Epaminondas could muster roughly 8,000 hoplites, barely a quarter of them Theban citizens. But he enjoyed two decisive asymmetries, morale and innovation. Where Spartan allies marched out of fear, the Boeotians marched to defend fresh autonomy. Where Sparta trusted in time-hallowed drill, Thebes trusted in a tactical revolution born in Epaminondas's restless nights. Central to that revolution was the sacred band, 300 warriors paired lover to lover, sworn to die rather than abandon each other's side. In prior campaigns against Orchomenus and Thespiae, the band had shown itself capable of punching holes in enemy lines in a manner reminiscent of heavy cavalry. Epaminondas asked what might happen if an entire wing of the phalanx behaved like that, a mass 50 shields deep, not the conventional 8. Such a column, if driven against one flank, could smash through before the opposing wing even realized the center was a lure. To accomplish this, Epaminondas laid out 3 preparatory measures. First, he drilled Thebans to march in an oblique order, each successive file a few paces behind the preceding one. So the whole army advanced like a giant wedge, its left foremost, its right dangling back out of spear range. Second, he trained supporting Boeotian contingents to ignore the natural reflex, to accelerate and lock shields on contact. Their mission was to merely shadow the Spartan center, denying it the chance to wheel and rescue its threatened flank. Third, and most controversial, he entrusted the opening blow to cavalry. Greek horsemen were typically derided as scouts fit only for foraging or pursuit, but Theban nobles had invested in sturdy Thessalian mares and practiced shock charges under a young officer named Pelopidas. Epaminondas planned to let these riders stampede into the Spartan screen, sowing disorder mere moments before the sacred band arrived like an earthquake. On the 7th day of the Eleutheria month, the armies met near the tiny village of Leuctra. The plain was a shallow bowl, boxed by vine-striped foothills and bisected by a dry stream bed. Poor terrain for cavalry, ideal for hoplites. Kleombrotos anchored his elite right wing on a low rise, as Spartan custom demanded. His left, manned by allied poleis with thinner armor, stretched toward a vineyard wall. Between them formed a gleaming copper barrier, 12 men deep. Epaminondas spent those first hushed minutes riding the line, speaking to farmers and potters by name. "This shield," he told one gray-bearded Thespian, striking the Aspis rim, "is a wall. Behind it stands your children. Let the enemy break themselves upon what they mistake for a mere circle of wood." To the sacred band, he said nothing. Their eyes were already locked on the Spartan lambda sigils across the dust. At a discreet signal, Pelopidas trotted forward, pennant snapping. The charge came like a clap of thunder. Theban cavalry spurred downhill, short coppice blades flashing. Spartan skirmishers hurled javelins but faltered as hooves churned the earth. A knot of horsemen smashed into Laconian outriders, unseating them amid sprays of gravel. In the center of Kleombrotos's line, a visible tremor rippled. Nothing fatal, but enough. Epaminondas barked a single word: "Drome!" Run! 50 files left of Thebes erupted. The sacred band, helmets low, accelerated from quick step to pounding sprint, each man screaming the Boeotian war cry to drown rising doubts. Behind them came 2,000 Boeotian farmers, 50 rank blocks 30 feet wide, their spears angled like a wheat field in storm wind. The oblique order ensured that by the time the Spartan right even finished lowering spears, it was absorbing 600,000 pounds of bronze-tipped flesh delivered at near jogging speed. Eyewitnesses later disagreed on whether King Kleombrotos died in the first minute or staggered half an hour before succumbing, but all agreed his presence at the point of impact proved suicidal. Surrounded by the hippies, his 300-strong royal guard, he tried to refuse the column, yet the Theban depth turned physics itself into a weapon. Men toppled forward, momentum stacked shields against Spartan chest plates, spear shafts snapped in the press, and suddenly Spartan formation, perfect on parchment, became a coffin. Once the king fell, panic radiated like cracks in pottery. The perioikoi behind him shouted for room to fight, but the slope offered none. Spartans on the extreme right folded first, stepping back to breathe, and the moment a single file disengaged, the sacred band pivoted inward as Epaminondas had drilled. A human gate swinging onto the exposed flank of the Spartan center. While this slaughter unfolded, the remainder of Thebes advanced at a measured walk. Their spears clattered harmlessly against Laconian bronze But Epaminondas wanted only to pin. Boeotian trumpeters blew steady notes, forbidding individual dashes. Every heartbeat, the Spartan center lingered. More of its right bled out and collapsed inward in gory spirals. Allied contingents on the Spartan left watched the lambda shields falling like felled trees and felt the unmistakable chill of abandonment. When word that Kleombrotos lay dying reached the Allied wing, the Mantineans broke first. Without orders, they backed away, shields half raised, faces white. The dominoes sped along the line. Tegeans, Elis, Phocians, all suddenly conscious that they had marched north, not from love of Sparta, but from fear. With the god-king's aura punctured by a Boeotian spear, what exactly were they defending? Some tried to rally at the vineyard wall. Others threw helmets and ran toward the far hills. Laconian officers bellowed threats of flogging, but their voices drowned beneath a din of splintering ash and pounding hooves. Theban cavalry had looped behind to cut off escape. In less than an hour, the finest army Greece had ever fielded dissolved into knots of fugitives. Casualties were lopsided, perhaps 1,000 Spartans dead, including 400 full Spartiates, an irreplaceable hemorrhage in a citizen body that barely numbered 5,000. Thebans lost fewer than 300. But those statistics cannot capture the psychic rupture. Greek diplomats later wrote that when Laconian heralds asked for a truce to collect bodies, Epaminondas allowed it, so they might learn how little blood it took to drown a legend. Victory at Leuctra yielded more than battered shields for temple dedications. It unraveled the geopolitical tapestry of the Peloponnese. Epaminondas wasted no time. Over the next 3 campaigning seasons, he marched a grand circuit of Spartan dependencies, inviting Helot populations to abandon estates and join a new city. Messenia, fortified atop Mount Ithome. For 3 centuries, Sparta had relied on Messenian labor to feed its hoplites. Now that lifeline was severed by stone walls and Theban garrisons. Farther north, he summoned Arcadian hill tribes, long resentful of Spartan raids. Out of a dozen hamlets, he carved a single metropolis, Megalopolis, great city, bankrolled partially by Theban timber and silver. Within its new council hall sat exiles from Tegea and Mantinea, drafting federal bylaws that mirrored the Boeotian model, local autonomy inside a common defense pact led, at first, by Thebes. Even Athens, once Sparta's bitter enemy, watched with queasy fascination. Demosthenes quipped that the spear of Thebes has grown as long as the bow of Persia. Yet Athenian merchants quietly opened grain contracts with Messenia, delighted to see Spartan competition strangled. If political ripples spread wide, military ripples tunneled deep beneath the next generation. Among Philip of Macedon's hostages in Thebes during the 360s was a slow-eyed teenager with a limp and bottomless appetite for drill observations. That youth, freed a decade later, would mold Macedon's peasant levy into a pike phalanx sarissa, twice the length of Greek spears, flank it with companion cavalry, and conquer the known world under the name Alexander. Philip later admitted that Epaminondas' oblique order and shock column were his tutors. What the Theban genius accomplished with 50 deep hoplites, Macedon would duplicate with 16 deep pikemen and wedge-charging nobles on horseback. Leuctra, in short, was not a terminal point of classical warfare, but a hinge into Hellenistic blitzkrieg. In antiquity, the Thebans learned that a single breach can bring down an empire. In the 21st century, our vulnerabilities are digital, yet the lesson is identical. Seal the flank before the enemy exploits it. Data hoplite shield scours dark web markets, flags leaks of your passwords, and dispatches takedown orders faster than a sacred band charge. We tested the service weeks ago and saw compromised logins scrubbed in under 24 hours. Use code Epaminondas at the link below for a 65% side or to 1% discount and defend your identity like a Boeotian wall of bronze. Now, back to the legacy of Leuctra. Sparta's reaction to defeat was equal parts grief and denial. A funeral procession bore Kleombrotos home, but the real casualty was the myth of invincibility. Council elders passed emergency decrees, allowing some perioikoi to marry Spartiate widows, a heresy unthinkable a decade earlier. Recruiting age stretched upward to 40, then 45. Yet nothing halted demographic collapse. Every citizen killed at Leuctra represented 2 unborn successors. Politically, the city oscillated between isolation and reckless sorties. In 362 BC, a reformed army under King Agesilaus attempted to challenge Epaminondas at Messenia. There, Sparta survived only because Theban allies bickered, yet Agesilaus could not reverse Messenian secession. When news of that stalemate reached the oracle at Delphi, priests declared that the spear point of the Dorians had cracked, and no iron could reforge it. Theban supremacy, though brilliant, was fleeting. In 362 BC, Epaminondas perished at Messenia, run through by a Spartan lance while attempting another flank shock. Carried from the field, he famously broke the spear shaft lodged in his chest so that no enemy might claim his armor. With his death, Theban diplomacy lost its charismatic core. Boeotian allies drifted, Arcadian councils squabbled, and Athens seized coastal footholds. Yet, the imprint of Leuctra could not be erased. It demonstrated that tactical genius, not mere numbers or pedigree, could reorder an entire civilization. It proved that morale flows not from mythology, but from visible success. And it forecast the ascendancy of hybrid armies, part hoplite, part missile, part cavalry, into which Macedon, Rome, and Carthage would pour fresh innovation. In our modern world of algorithms and satellites, the dusty plain near Leuctra still speaks. It whispers that no formation, however revered, is beyond reinvention. That the surest path to decay is mistaking tradition for destiny. And that somewhere, at the edge of imagination, another Epaminondas is already sketching asymmetrical lines that will unseat today's giants.